If you've started planning a trip and are in the middle of figuring out how to visit Olympic National Park, then you've discovered how much there is to see and do there. And you've also discovered how tricky planning your trip to Olympic can be. Hi, I'm James Ian, and I've written loads of guides and published several itineraries for Olympic National Park. And in today's episode, I'm going to share my 12 top tips for visiting Olympic National Park, Washington. I hope that these Olympic National Park tips will help give you the guidance on how to navigate this amazing but kind of complicated national park. If you're watching this on YouTube, like and subscribe right now. If you're watching or listening somewhere else, follow my podcast to get the episodes as they come out. Following these tips will help you avoid common pitfalls and will help give you the peace of mind that you need knowing that you're fully prepared and you know exactly what to do when you're planning your trip there. Be sure to stay to the end where I'll be sharing my number 1 tip for Olympic National Park.
Welcome to National Parks Collecting with James Ian, the national park expert. He is here to help you have the best national parks trips ever. Get tips, discover hidden gems, and learn all you need to know. This is your path to collecting national parks experiences, memories, and maybe even a stamp or two.
So what are my top tips for Olympic National Park? Remember to stay to the end when I'll be sharing my number 1 tip. You'll want to know it before you go. What's my first Olympic National Park planning tip? When you visit Olympic, make sure that you allow enough time to see all the main ecosystems in the park. Olympic National Park is unique in that it actually encompasses 4 distinct ecosystems. There's the rugged Pacific coastline, there's temperate rainforests, there's the subalpine mountains and wildflower meadows, and the drier lowland forests of the eastern slopes. To truly appreciate the diversity of the park, plan to spend enough time to visit all these areas. The Hoh Rainforest and the Quinault Rainforest offer lush green canopies and are prime examples of a temperate rainforest ecosystem. These areas are often shrouded in mist and are home to some of the largest trees in the world. The alpine meadows of Hurricane Ridge provide a stark contrast with their colorful wildflowers and sweeping mountain views. Really beautiful on a clear day. The coastlines with their tide pools and rugged beaches offer a completely different experience. There's offshore sea stacks poking out of the ocean, there's enormous sun-bleached driftwood, and there's frequent mist. Finally, there are the lowland forests and lakes. Highlights here include Lake Crescent, which has water sports and beautiful hikes and waterfalls, and the Solduck Valley, where you can soak in hot springs and visit the most famous waterfall in the national park. Each ecosystem has different experiences, different photo ops, so give yourself time to explore and appreciate each one. I recommend at least 4 days to really do the park justice. What's another tip for visiting Olympic National Parks? I recommend that you don't miss the Quinault area. This is often overlooked in favor of the more famous Hoh Rainforest, but the Quinault area, I think, is a hidden gem within Olympic National Park. It's actually known as the Valley of the Giants because it's home to some of the largest specimens in the entire world of Sitka spruce, western hemlock, and Douglas fir. The Quinault Rainforest offers a really serene, much less crowded alternative if you're looking to experience these ancient rainforests in a more tranquil way. I really love the area. There's also different activities that you can do. There's hiking, kayaking, fishing, and there's a scenic drive that's really worthwhile, the Quinault Rainforest Loop Drive. It allows you to enjoy the rainforest from the comforts of your vehicle. You can stop and explore along the way. So if you're interested in either a leisurely drive or an adventurous hike, the Quinault area offers a chance to experience the temperate rainforest and the lake without the crowds that you'll find in other areas of the park. What's another tip for a trip to Olympic National Parks? One of my most practical tips for Olympic is to make campground or lodging reservations well in advance. The window of opportunity to visit Olympic National Park is relatively short due to its northern location and the tendency for really wet, cold winters. It's a rainforest, but most of the rain falls in winter, which is nice because then summer's nice weather, but it's a short season. So the park is incredibly popular during the summer months when the weather is the nicest and most people can travel. To avoid the disappointment of sold-out campgrounds and lodgings, book your accommodations well in advance of your trip. I mean, this is a tip from most national parks, but it's especially important at Olympic and even more important if you're planning to stay in really popular, sought-after locations like the Solduck Hot Springs Resort or the Lake Crescent Lodge. Reservations can often be made up to 6 months in advance, and for some of the park's prime spots, they all fill up almost immediately. Planning ahead not only guarantees you a place to stay, but also allows you to choose the most convenient locations for the activities that you're most interested in, whether that's hiking or wildlife watching or just enjoying the tranquility of the park. There are 14 campgrounds inside the national park. Some are first come, first served, which is great if you didn't make reservations in time. Others are reservable in the summer. Some of them you can reserve up to 6 months in advance for some sites, 2 weeks in advance at others, and 4 days in advance at others. So if you miss the 6-month mark, you can still make bookings, but know when they become available and be prepared to snap them up the second they go on sale, as they often sell out within seconds. You make reservations on recreation.gov website. There are some lodges inside the park. These are also very popular. So if you want to stay inside the park, make your reservations well in advance. There are links in the show notes below to book the lodges. There are other options outside the park. 2 main towns are Forks and Port Angeles. So if you miss the lodgings or campgrounds inside the park, book outside the park. You can often get more last-minute deals, but even they tend to book up very early. So I really recommend booking well in advance and as soon as you know that you're going to go. Today, we're looking at tips for visiting Olympic National Park, and my next tip is also very practical. To avoid a major inconvenience, I recommend that you book ferries in advance also. Now, you don't need to take a ferry to get into or around the national park, but you may end up taking one or more to get to or from the national park. So check your route really carefully, and if you have to take one, don't wait until you get there to book it, as they frequently fill in advance, especially in the busy summer months. So if you're coming in from the SEA airport, the main Seattle airport, the Seattle Bremerton ferry, Seattle Bainbridge ferry, and the Edmonds Kingston ferry don't take reservations. However, the Port Townsend and Cortez, Friday Harbour, Cooperville, Lopez Island, Orcas Island, Shore Island, Sydney, British Columbia ferries all recommend and require reservations. Check the Washington State Ferries website, there's a link in the description box below, for schedules and to make reservations. What's another practical tip for Olympic National Park? When you visit Olympic and when you're planning out your trip, expect drive times to be longer than you think. Olympic National Park is big. Navigating the park's really large, diverse landscape means spending a fair amount of time on the road. So when you're planning your daily schedule, consider the time that you'll need to move between different areas of the park. For example, driving from the Elwha Valley to the Quinault Rainforest could take several hours. This understanding will help you manage your expectations and will allow you to fully immerse yourself in the experiences that each location within the park has to offer without feeling rushed. Be aware that if you're looking at Google Maps, for example, to plan out your time, that the park's size and the winding nature of the mountain roads and sometimes the traffic can make drive times longer than what you might anticipate based on distance alone. So factor in stops for roadworks, for scenic views, for wildlife crossings maybe, the occasional slow-moving vehicle, and allow that extra time in your travel estimates just to make sure that you arrive in the area of the park that you're visiting at the time that you expected or anticipated or hoped to arrive. What's another practical tip for Olympic National Park? I can't stress this enough, but if you can, I really recommend that you get through the entrance stations early. Arriving early at Olympic National Park is more than just a tip for beating the crowds, it's actually a strategy for ensuring entry. During the summer months, entrance stations such as those at Hurricane Ridge and the Quinault Rainforest can become choke points as parking lots fill up. So by around 8 a.m., the Park Service may restrict access, only allowing new vehicles in as others leave. To avoid waiting in long lines or facing the possibility of a delayed entry, aim to be at the entrance stations before 8 a.m. at the absolute latest. This early start will not only secure your spot, but it will also enhance your experience because you'll be with quieter trails. The soft golden light of the morning is perfect for photography. With popular spots like Hurricane Ridge offering limited parking, an early arrival can really make the difference between a day spent exploring the peaks and a day spent idling in your car. Now, something to be aware of is that not all areas of the park actually have entrance stations. The beaches do not. Lake Crescent does not, but the parking space there is also limited. So I also recommend getting there as early as possible. Earlier rather than later. If you're watching this on my @National Parks Collecting YouTube channel and you haven't already, please like and subscribe below. It really does help. What's another thing that visitors to Olympic National Park should do before they go? This tip is something that not that many people know about, but I think is really convenient. Before you drive up to Hurricane Ridge, if you're planning to head there, check their webcam. One of the park's crown jewels, Hurricane Ridge, has breathtaking panoramic views of the Olympic Mountains and beyond on a clear day. And you can actually see right to the ocean. You can see Canada on a clear day. It's really amazing. However, the weather at the ridge can really be very different from what it is at Port Angeles, which is the bottom of the road. So before making the ascent up this narrow winding road to a place where the main thing is to enjoy the views, take a moment to check the Hurricane Ridge webcam. It has a live feed that shows you the current conditions at the top, which can be clear and sunny even when cloud shrouds the lower elevations. Sometimes it's clear in Port Angeles, you drive through clouds on the road up and then you're above the clouds so you can still see the tops of the mountains. Also kind of fun. I find the webcam an invaluable tool for ensuring that my trip up to the mountain isn't in vain. So you can check it, make sure that there's clear views, and then decide whether to head up or perhaps change your plans for a different area of the park where weather isn't quite so important. There's a link in the show notes below to the webcam. What's another thing that visitors to Olympic National Park should know about? I highly recommend that you check for seasonal road closures and trail conditions before heading out. Olympic National Park's vast and varied terrain means that the road and trail conditions can change with the seasons, and sometimes even overnight due to weather events or maintenance. So before you set out, I always like to check the park's official website, there's a link in the show notes below, or contact the Visitor Centre for the latest updates on road closures and trail conditions. The National Park Service does a good job of updating their websites, so it's an easy resource. This can save you from the frustration of arriving at a trailhead only to find it's closed or impassable. Seasonal road closures, particularly in the higher elevations, can limit access to certain parts of the park, while trail maintenance or environmental protection efforts can close or reroute trails. Staying informed will help you make the most of your time there and ensure that you're not putting yourself in a potentially unsafe situation. What's another tip for first-time visitors to Olympic National Park? I really recommend that you pack layers for changing weather conditions, even in summer. Olympic National Park is a place where weather can shift dramatically, even in a single day. Even during the peak summer season, a sunny morning can suddenly turn into a chilly, windy, or rainy afternoon. I've had this happen to me where it was lovely in the morning and then suddenly clouds rolled in, it was raining, fog rolled in at the beach, it was really cold. So to stay comfortable and ensure that you're able to explore fully and don't have to change your plans, I recommend dressing in layers and taking layers with you. Always start with a moisture wicking base layer and then add insulating layer like a fleece or a down jacket, and then has a waterproof or a windproof shell. Hurricane Ridge is named because of the strong winds, hurricane-like winds, so a wind jacket there is particularly helpful too. Is there anything else first-time visitors should know about Olympic? One of my tips for visiting Olympic National Park is to check the tides before visiting the beaches. The Olympic National Park beaches are stunning. They're amazing, but you need to plan your trip around the tides. The tides should guide your schedule, basically. The intertidal zones are best explored at low tide when the retreating water reveals tide pools and the offshore sea stacks become more visible. At low tide, the beaches are exposed. They're often completely covered in water at high tide, so you can't even get to them. And then they leave these rock pools with green anemones and orange and purple sea stars. There's hermit crabs, there's mollusks, and exploring them is lots and lots and lots of fun. But it's only possible at low tide. So to ensure that you get the most out of your coastal visit, check the tide charts before you go. Aim to visit during a falling tide, which will give you the safest and the most extensive access to the beaches. Negative tides are even best because they're even lower. That's technically when the level of the water is below the standard 0 sea level, but any low tide is fine. Remember that high tide can cut off these areas, so plan your return trip accordingly. Keep an eye on the rising water, keep an eye on the time. You can easily get distracted while exploring the rock pools. You don't want to get stranded. There's a link in the show notes below to the most reliable tide chart, and I highly recommend that you look at it for the dates that you're planning to visit and then plan your trip around that. What's the biggest mistake that you can make when planning a trip to Olympic National Park? So far today, we've looked at 10 tips for visiting Olympic National Park. We have 2 more to go. Stay to the end to hear my top tip in just a moment. But first, my second last tip is to have a well-planned itinerary. You'll have seen by now that there's a lot that goes into planning a trip to Olympic National Park. The park is huge. There's loads to see and do. The park is really popular, so it can be crowded. Timing is key. And it can be really difficult to know exactly what to do and when. The number one thing that people ask me about actually is how to put everything together into an actual itinerary. They worry that they'll be somewhere when everybody else is there. They worry that they'll arrive too late and spend hours waiting to get into the park. They worry about being in the right place at the right time. The tides, for example, are really important. Some of them are traveling with their whole family and they stress about how to keep everybody happy when people have different interests. So planning a trip to Olympic can be overwhelming. And that's why I created these really detailed itineraries to help you take away that stress. There are 1, 2, 3, and 4 day options. And they provide you with a really detailed hour-by-hour plan, but with different options that cater to different activity levels and interests. They also have tips for visiting, important information, hike description, driving directions, tide information, and more. The goal of these itineraries is to remove the stress of planning and allow you to fully enjoy your visit. They're designed to provide you with the knowledge to navigate the park efficiently. By using one of my itineraries, you'll save time on planning and ensure that you don't miss out on any of the park's highlights. They help take away the overwhelm, and they'll give you all the information that you need in one spot so that you don't need to worry about missing out on the highlights or stress about how to put everything together that you want to do into a schedule that makes the most sense. Just follow the link in the show notes below. Now, as promised, what's my number 1 tip for Olympic National Parks? This tip is for anyone staying more than 1 day. If you're only staying 1 day, you can ignore this one. But if you're staying 2 or more days, this is really important. Did I mention that Olympic is huge? Well, to cut down on all the driving, I really recommend staying in at least 2 different places if you're visiting more than 1 day. There are several main sections to the park. There's Hurricane Ridge, the Solduck Valley, Lake Crescent, the Quinault Rainforest, the La Push beaches, the Claylark beaches, and Lake Quinault. There are a few others as well, but these are the main ones, and they aren't close to each other. If you choose one place to stay for your entire time and you're hoping to visit all or most of those places, then you're going to spend a large chunk of your day driving. I know that moving accommodation can be a pain. I usually try not to do it, but it will cut down on driving so much and make it easier to get into the park early each day. Port Angeles is a great base for Hurricane Ridge, Lake Crescent, and the Solduck Valley. Forks is a great location for any of the beaches and the Quinault Rainforest. If you're also planning to visit Lake Quinault, the Quinault Rainforest, then you could stay around Lake Quinault or Forks or the Claylock area. If you want help planning your trip, check the links in the description box below. There's a bunch of planning and booking resources that you can use to plan and book your trip. And keep watching my videos to get even more help so that you can have the best national parks vacation ever. And if you want to get notified about the next episode, subscribe and click below.